Okay, it's time for the next chapter of the Syren, chapter 13. We're going to finish off the furnishings down the deck. This includes the Fife rail. We use pads around the masts, all 5 of the bits, and then the galley stack and the rings that go on the deck. First off, I'm going to start out doing the pads around the masts. Instructions say you're going to use 5 lengths of 1/8 by 1/32 wood to simulate those. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do these the same way I did the companionway walls, where I'm just going to use a piece of tape to tape them together. Then I can roll and do the glue on them, and come back and then cut them to size. So get those. I can set them aside and let these things dry. I'll come back to those in a bit to do the to trim them to shape and glue them to the deck. So while those are drying, I'm going to skip the Fife rail for now because I got to get the Dremel out and do some shaping for the stanchions. I'm going to start with the gallows bits. The gallows bits, there's 2 of them. They're identical except for the pieces on top that the ship's launch goes to. Per the instructions, we're not putting those pieces on top. We're just making the gallows bits and putting them on the deck. They are made from, which I'd written this down on the plan or plans here. There's gallows bits. The bits supports are made from 3/32 wood, and tops are made from 1/8" stock. Okay. I got my wood here. This one here is 3/32. This one is 1/8. Went through and just labeled them what they were. Top is 1/8. And supports are 3/32. So the supports here are actually smaller than the top, which is fine. They would be anyway. That just means that when you glue them up, you need to make sure you get the supports centered on the wood rather than on one side or the other for the cross piece. I can take my lengths from the plans. That long for that one. The other one should be the same length because they should be identical to each other. There's the top. Get these cut off. Actually, let me get the other ones marked out here. Started. I'm going to cut that off once the end is messed up. So I'll start cutting these, and I'll come back and we'll get them glued together. So I have my 4 pieces for the gallows bit cut to length. The ends of the cross pieces need to be shaped. They have a kind of flat and an angle and a curve on it. It's not a flat, it's all curved. But I'm going to start off by cutting a flat on each end. To do that, I'm just going to mark the plans up a little bit here, just to get me in my, oops, too close. Just get an angle here that I can cut to. I was going to do the one side, that way I can get them equal. That way I can lay the piece on top and just eyeball an angle on it. Flip it over and cut another one on here. And that's just my starting point because they're going to be sanded as well. So, come on through here. Same thing on this one. Not quite equal. Trim a little bit more off of this one. They don't have to be exact. Then I can do the same thing on this other one. And for that, just stack one on top of the other. And that will give me my length. or angle I should say. So all cut. Next thing is they are curved a little bit, so I'm going to grab something round to file with, sand with. That should give us the tops of the bits that are fairly equal with each other and they're not going to be exact. And then I can take and glue them together somewhere around here. I had my oh, it's right there. So get one done. If you have a board you can pin this stuff to, that would work great. I don't happen to have a board to pin it to. So mark it up. Mark the other one. These marks will end up being on the underside, so they won't really be seen. And if all goes well, this mark should be the same width as the uprights. And the uprights can just glue in and be perpendicular. So I'm going to use a little wood glue on them. These things don't have to be, these things are not going to take any real tension on them. So that's the gallows bits. Next is the writing bits, which is this one right here. There's no plans for it. You just have to build it, kind of just figure out which plans show the height and ones that show the width. So for the height, I can get them off this plan. The verticals are for the foremast. Okay, right middle use that's for a mast. The after that is this heavy beam is rounded off. This timber can be 360 by 1/8. So it's this one here, 360 by 1/8. So I can get that wood out. 16th by 1/8. 3/16 by 1/8. It's a pretty big piece of wood. The verticals are 1/8 stock. Which has the same size as the horizontal piece on the gallows bits. So, vertical pieces. I can take out this plan right here. Keep in mind there is some detail up here you got to take into account for. So we're going to make the bit tall enough for that. Two pieces. I don't want to cut that end. And last time I cut them, I need the same length for these things. I came in, the first one, cut it part way through, and I took my 1, 2, 3 block out there. This is a pretty heavy block, so it's not going to sit there until you start pushing on stuff. So there I can cut one, come in and cut the second. As long as you don't push too hard on that block, you're not going to move it. And that should give you two pieces that are pretty darn close to the same length. So there's the verticals for the writing bit, I think it's called. I need the horizontal. For that, I need to grab a different plan. This is the plan for the deck layout. But right here is the bit we're making. So now I take this long piece, get an angle here so I can cut it and work it. Take this fatter piece of wood And I can just figure out how long it's going to be. And while I'm at it, I'm going to mark where the holes are supposed to be for the belaying pins. 5 belaying pins in it. So I can come off and cut this one to length. And there's my pieces for those bits, for that bit. Now, if you notice, on both plans, you'll find that this top piece, cross piece, is let into the bits about halfway. So I'll have to mark up and cut those out. I want to do that before sanding the top because this can be easy to screw up. So there, go about halfway. And then rather than put this one on the plan to mark it, I'm going to come and I'm just going to put the two next to each other with a flat piece on the end here to get them even. I'm just going to mark across from one to the other. That way you get them at the same height. Fun part ensues in that now we got to cut those slots out and make them so they fit the cross piece. So I'm going to try something here I haven't done before with this kit. Oops. So I'm going to see about using the back saw to cut it, the miter box. That'll give me a depth there. Depth there. If we cut it just right, you get down to the depth you need. So that'll work for that one. That'll take some fine tuning. But it should be good. And with that, I can start cleaning those out with an X-Acto blade. So if you go to hair more. Like that. Matter of fitting kind of tight, just the way I want them. So then it says the back of them, back of the bit, or the cross piece, the aft side of this heavy beam is rounded off. So pick which side you want it to be aft and round it off. It looks like the ends are square though. Looks like only the back side is rounded off. So we're going to do that with a little sandpaper. A couple of swipes on the end. Clean them up. And last, we need to drill the holes in the top. So grab the drill, pin vise, and a belaying pin so I know what size to do the hole. One belaying pin. I'll have to blacken these belaying pins as well. So that pin, I think it's about a 3/64 drill. Yep. 3/64 is actually a little bit big, but once you get your whatever coating you're going to put onto it, it'll probably make the hole a little bit smaller. I'm going to go through here and mark my center line as well, in the hopes that I can get these things somewhat centered. So 5 holes. smooth them off. Shove a bling pin through it just to clean them out. And there we go. Last thing to do is to mark off how these things are centered. And glue it together. The writing bits up here in front also get a knee on them, but we'll worry about that in a minute. If I do like this, pop to the back sides up. And I can very carefully mark out where the bits go into the cross piece. Then glue them together. Try not to get too much glue on here. I don't want a lot of squeeze out. Figure out which side's the best. Put that up to the top. And glue them in place. I also have to carve the top of these. Probably should have done that before gluing them in place. But it can be done afterwards as well. So there's that bit. The gallows bits are getting pretty dry. So 4 bits is 3 30-seconds. 16, 3 30-seconds posts. And the top of it is a 1/16 by an 1/8 crossbeam. Right there. I'm going to do it like I did before. Mark the length. Mark my holes. And cut it off. And just like the other bit, this plank does not get a notch in it. It gets set into notches on the uprights. So I can cut this off. There's no rounding or anything of this piece. So it's at 3 30-seconds for the uprights. The uprights I can take off this plan. Now, this bit, and this bit all have rigging attached to them. But once you get them fit the way you want, you'll have a nice looking set of bits. Looks like mine aren't even, but we'll adjust that by sticking them together. And then I can trim them. This means it'll be a little bit shorter, but nobody will notice. Okay, unlike the other ones, I want to try to shape the top of these before moving on. There's going to be a slot and then a bevel on top. The bevel's easy enough. You just run it on your sandpaper and give yourself a bevel on top. For the notch around it, You do want to get that in there. I believe you're going to end up possibly tying a rope around it. I'm not sure. And you have to figure out the best way you can do that. What's going to work best for you. I think I'm going to try this file. Oops. Hopefully on the right side, everything lines up. Something like that. And that's that bit that's made up. That just leaves the bit for the bowsprit. So that is made up from 1/8 by 1/8 for the post. Eighth by 1/8 for the post. So 1/16 by 1/8. That was. That looks, to me on the plans, that looks too thin. Because this is the bowsprit bit. I think there is definitely something wrong with what they're saying for the bowsprit bit. That's definitely bigger. 1/8 by 1/8 post is right. But that looks to be 3/32 by 1/8. That was 3/16, so that's too thick. This one here is 1/8 by 1/16, and it's thicker than that. Right width, but it's thicker. So instructions are wrong. This piece is not 1/16 by 1/16. It looks to be more like 1/8 by 3/16. So let me find one of those up, and I'll come back. Okay, so this top piece, I did cut off a piece that is 3/32 by 1/8, and that better fits in with the plans. So these things are let in just like the others, and that's the start of the bowsprit bit. And make sure it's wide enough that you can get all the pieces inside for bracing the bowsprit. Which is right here. The end of the bowsprit is going to be made into a square to fit into there. Now the instructions say using some 1/8 inch stock to go inside here to fill this in where the bowsprit goes. But I'm not going to use 1/8 inch square. I'm going to use the 1/8 by 3/16 because that will give me a good opening to work with for angling it. As you can see here, they've drawn out your line there and there and there for your bowsprit to go through. So this piece, cut to length, it'll have to be angled at that angle. Not too bad. I'll cut it a little higher long. I can always trim the length of it once I get it shaped how I want it. Two of these. A bit long. So, with them being a bit long, they should not fit in this opening. But I can come back and I can figure out the angle of the bowsprit to go through. And with that, I should just be able to use the chisel just to go on down and shape it off. Something like that. So that should be that top piece. And where I stuck it, start shaping the bottom piece in the same way. Like that. So that should give me a good opening to work with for the bowsprit to fit through there. And then come and cut them to length. My opening looking pretty good here. So I just be able to come and go ahead and glue this one in place. Then I'll let these dry, and I'll come back later for the galleys, for the pieces that go inside here to shim it up, and then I'm going to do the galley stack and finish off the pieces around the masts when I come back. Okay, back to the lumber that goes around the mast hole openings. My plan is to take one of these, cut off square like I did. Let's get rid of this fringe over here. Because these things are supposed to be square. So you take one, cut off square on one side, take the other one, lay on top of it. And that will give you your width. And you should end up with a square opening or square set of boards. And then all I just need to do is cut a hole in these things and glue them, stand them up and glue them to the deck. These will be done in golden oak so they get a darker tint to them. I'll do that another time. Right now, I'm going to take a break for the day. So far, I got the bowsprit bit almost done. How's wood is going up still. I have the gallows bits complete as far as they need to be now. Then I have the other two 4 bits done with the knees of this one ready to go. So I will come back when I'm ready to get these glued on, finish this up and get these glued on, then we can work on the Fife rail and the galley stack. So I have most of the bits and stuff done, plates for the masts, still working on the bowsprit bit, just making it so it fits the bowsprit, which I've already went ahead and jumped ahead and cut a square section on the back of it, just so I have something to fit to the bowsprit bit. So I'll finesse both of them, get it to fit just right, and then put the bowsprit aside, so I'll work on that later. I'll get that bit done so that I can get it onto the deck. Working on the galley stack. It's just a couple pieces of dowel that are 1/8 inch in diameter. What I did is I cut them off at a 45, and then I went and sanded them so they're making them a little bit less than 45, so it's not a perfect square here. The stack should stick up a little bit. The bottom's about the right length, top's a bit long on purpose, so I have something to be able to hold on to, and I'll cut it off later. But I'll go ahead and get them glued together. This is going to be painted black. So I'll just use a little bit of super glue and glue them together. So while that sets, I've already started the base for it, which, like all these other base plates, it's 3 places, or like the side of the cabin and the base of the masts is just 3 planks glued together, same way I did before, and then come through and cut it so it's square. Take 2 pieces of wood, make sure they're a little bit longer than you need. And glue them on either side. So when that's up enough, take 2 more or trim them off, then take 2 more and glue them onto the other sides. So I'll get that done and come back. So all my bits and plates are done. I've got them stained. I got the Galley Stack assembled and painted and glued onto its base. It looks a little tall and funny and skinny, but when you start putting the bits next to it, they're supposed to be there, and realize that it's about the right size. Because these bits will go fore and aft of it, and you got to think a man's going to be about as tall as that. It's about the right size. That'd be a good 6 or 8 inch duct. I also have my bowsprit bit pre-fit to the bowsprit, so they can just go together. There'll have to be a little bit of fine tuning on this. I think the bowsprit actually needs to come down on the one end a little bit, so I have to adjust my angle. That's fine. It's all part of the kit, all part of the modeling. And the bowsprit's going to be too long as it is anyway. It's going to have to have this end trimmed off to fit, but there's a lot of shaping that's going on this as well, some flat spots and whatnot. But that's for another chapter later on. Right now, excuse me, we just want to get the bowsprit bit done. Stain them up with a Puritan pine. I think that's good. I think the golden oak would be too dark. I also have my Fife rails glued together, the top and bottom of that. Instructions say you need to drill holes in it. And while in actuality it does have laser cut holes in it, these holes are too small for your belaying pins, so you're going to have to drill them out anyway. But since they're laser cut holes, you have your pattern to drill them by. So I'm going to let this thing cure up. Next, I got to make up the stanchions for the Fife rail. So I'm going to see about cutting 1 or 2 or 3 and then come back and show you how I did that. Okay, I think I have the stanchions figured out. What I do is I come onto the plans, mark out where my main features are, chuck it up in the old Dremel here, and I can turn it on. Darken up my lines, and then I just grab one of my files here, a little diamond file. Sorry about the noise. Now you just come in here and sand it down. Helps if you're centered here, right? This makes fairly quick work of it. Light pressure, let the Dremel do the work. All you're doing is holding the file against it. When you get a profile you're happy with, you can just cut it off. And I have an actual saw blade here that goes with the X-Acto knife, so I cut it off. So I just come in here and while spinning, start my cut. And there it is. One more station made. They'll have to be adjusted for the length, get them all the same length, but once you start getting going on them, they go pretty fast. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of them and come on back. Okay, here we go. I got everything onto the ship now for this chapter. All the rings, I even put the cannonballs in place, the Fife rail plate around the main mast, the two gallows bits, the righting bit, the 4-bit, the bowsprit bit, the galley chimney, and the plate around the foremast. So that completes this chapter, and next time we can move on, we can finish up the cap rails, which includes the stern davits, boarding plates, and the timber heads around the bow, as well as the hammock cranes. So that's it for now. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.